Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time, we're going back to cover a chaotic and ultimately disastrous time for the WWF. It's King of the Ring 2001, and it's so many things. It's Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho's main event push. It's Steve Austin's heel turn. It's the beginning of the invasion. Kyush, what do you make of all this? What are your memories of this time?
Okay, so we got. This is a very, very special show to me. For you guys who know my backstory, you know that I didn't watch during the Attitude Era, and I came back mid-2000 to wrestling. So this show was very special to me. It was the very first wrestling DVD that I purchased after I got back into wrestling. I would literally do my homework while this played in the background, basically over and over on loop, because it's the only wrestling thing that I owned for the longest time. And then I got Survivor Series 2000, and those were my only two DVDs.
Two magical pay-per-views to watch over and over. Wow.
Like, I didn't even need to rewatch this for this show. Like, I've seen it so many times.
Yeah, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure I haven't watched this since the night of. I remember I saw this pay-per-view that night. I was at a friend's house.
Like, one of the reasons that I watched it so many times, too, is that this was a special moment in wrestling history. It's so hard to separate it now from everything that comes after. Like, this is right on the precipice of WWE driving itself directly into a landfill and stopping, basically. It's the end of everything good and pure about WWE from this era. But this moment right before it drives off the cliff, the TV is electric.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The 2 months leading up to Invasion are magical. Or some of the most excited I've ever been to be a wrestling fan.
They're pushing the shit out of all of these new and interesting people. These Invasion guys keep popping up out of nowhere and like having this dramatic impact. Fans are popping huge for Jericho and Benoit, and it really feels like it's their time. Like, for somebody who had been a fan like during the year 2000, it really felt like this is the next generation coming now. Like, we're seeing what wrestling's going to look like in the future, and it's right now. And like, I just remember every single night I'd turn on Raw or SmackDown, and it would just feel like must-watch television. And I'm not sure it ever felt like must-watch television like this ever again.
This was really good. And so, I was the right age for it, but it felt like micro-targeted to me as somebody who had been a big WCW fan and a huge Chris Benoit fan. He's probably my favorite wrestler at this point. So
Ooh.
He's now getting a main event push.
So this is a bad night for you then.
Not the greatest. I was really upset to see him go out with the neck, and just stunned. I couldn't believe it, because I was like, wait, how did he hurt his neck? And when you rewatch this match, like, it seems obvious something's up. That did not look like it was supposed to be the finish of the match.
No. And I was a gigantic Chris Jericho fan, so like, I am having the same experience on the other side. The match that they have on Raw, Benoit and Jericho versus Austin and Triple H.
Incredible match.
For my money, it's the best American tag match of the past 30 or 40 years.
Might be the best. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a better one.
I mean, we got to go back to like Rock and Roll versus Midnights to have anything that can touch this. Like,
nothing in like WWF, WWE is coming at me.
Yeah, like, it's a genuinely special moment. Obviously, it's known more for Triple H tearing his quad during that match. But like, if you go back and watch that match and how hot the crowd is for it, and how special Benoit and Jericho getting that moment is, like, it's an unbelievable match.
And for me, I never expected them to win the titles.
No,
never in a billion years do you think they're going to beat Triple H and Steve Austin there.
Triple H and Steve Austin were invincible coming into that. Benoit and Jericho were mid-carders. Like, all night long they do vignettes making fun of how nobody thinks they're going to win.
Yeah. So this is a couple months after WrestleMania 17, where, of course, Steve Austin turned heel, sold his soul to the devil for the WWF Championship by joining forces with Vince McMahon to screw The Rock. The next night on Raw, Austin was booked in a rematch against Rock in a steel cage match. McMahon interferes, but then Triple H shows up We think he's there to make the save, and he's coming after Austin. But instead he joins with Austin and McMahon to join the two-man power trip. What do you think of that decision?
You know, I understand it academically that the main reason for it is probably just they knew people weren't going to boo Austin. So pairing him with Triple H, who has no trouble getting booed, is probably a great heat magnet stable and also allows you to build into a feud between those two through the summer, right? Totally academically understand it. But I also understand that if they had brought out Triple H and he had turned face there, that the fans were ready for it.
The pop he gets when he comes out there is enormous. I think people were ready to cheer him here.
Yeah, I don't think WWE understood that like fans were ready for that Triple H because he had been a heel for like a decade. Like, well, not even it had been only a couple years.
No, it's been 2 years, and like he had so many great matches by that point that like fans respected him. Like,
yeah.
It's different than a couple years after that when he's puffy, like horrible evolution Triple H. Like this Triple H was cool.
Yeah, cool as shit. He's coming off of that awesome match with Undertaker at Mania. Like he's just a different guy.
He had beaten Austin straight up in that classic 2 out of 3 falls match at No Way Out. Like seems perfect. You've got Austin as your heel, you turn Triple H as your mega hot baby face, and you can run with that for months.
I think that was actually part of the reason that him being behind running over Austin failed a little bit, is because I don't think fans are really all that enthusiastic to boo him anymore.
No, because he had been. The thing is, he had kind of turned face at that point because he had been feuding with Kurt.
Yeah.
In the Stephanie Love triangle. So he had like soft turned face, and then he went back heel, and I think the fans were disappointed.
Yeah. So, I mean, they still do manage to get mega heat on this. Like,
yeah,
Austin and Triple H destroying the rest of the roster gets
Austin
over.
Austin beats up Jim Ross. Him and Triple H just demolish the Hardys and Lita with steel chairs.
That's some of the most heat I've ever heard in a WWE segment. Like, that's old school Southern heat they got for that. Like, the only act more over than Steve Austin in this company was the Hardy Boys and Lita.
Yeah. So at Backlash, the Power Trip faced Undertaker and Kane in a winner-take-all match. Austin and Triple H won to get the tag titles. Austin was already the world champion. Triple H was the Intercontinental champion. Surprised they didn't just like throw the hardcore title and the European title in there too.
They really should have. Just like fucking throw all the belts.
Yeah.
And just have Vince carry them all out.
Give Vince the hardcore title.
Yeah.
So then at Judgment Day, Triple H lost the Intercontinental title to Kane in a chain match. What's your favorite chain match?
None.
None of them?
That was the one where he wrestled the Big Boss Man.
And Austin retained the world title against The Undertaker after McMahon interfered. The night after Judgment Day, by Judgment Day, I think they're realizing they need to change things up. I think they got the initial Backlash buy rate, and they weren't happy, and they're starting to see the ratings sink. So they're deciding we got to go in a different direction. We got to do a couple things. We got to push some new guys. So very rapidly, Benoit and Jericho get elevated into the main event. And they also decide we got to move the Invasion up. I think they were already soft planning on that before Triple H got hurt. But when Triple H blows his quad in that match and like Austin and Triple H is out the window, like what else are they going to do for the next 6 months if they don't do the Invasion?
I do wonder how. We've obviously talked about the Invasion before in various places. I do wonder how much they were intending to actually do the Invasion part of the Invasion until like they blew it with the Booker T Buff Bagwell match, and it's like, well, fuck it, we might as well get everything we can out of this now.
So what I think they're looking for at this point is they want I think they've now given up on WCW getting its own TV deal. Because the only thing they've been able to find is TNN was like, we'll put them on from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. on Saturday night. The rumored WCW late night appetite.
God,
I don't know.
how brutal would
I don't
that
know
have
if that
been?
was under any real consideration, but I do remember that being in like a market research survey.
Late night appetite.
That would have gotten over. Why wouldn't they just? I guess Saturday night is a damaged brand at that point.
Why would you do it then and not at 6:05 p.m.?
Because nobody wants to put this shit on the air.
Yeah, that's the problem. These days, WWE
Yeah.
could get 11 shows on tomorrow. Like, it's not a problem.
Um, then by now, I think they've decided what they want to do is they want to give either Raw or SmackDown to WCW, which their TV broadcast partners, I think, put an end to that when they're like, hey, we signed those deals to pay you all this money to show WWF, not WCW.
Yeah, what do you mean we're not going to get Austin and The Rock and Triple
Yeah.
H? Like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, like, fuck that.
Who's Booker T?
And like, I think initially they wanted to give, the initial talk was they were going to give Raw, they were going to give the Monday show to WCW, which seems absurd that they wouldn't. I mean, already by this point, who cares about SmackDown?
Right.
Like, yeah, SmackDown's on UPN, it's on a network, but like, it's the B show. It always had been.
Well, if you're trying to get people to take this genuinely seriously,
Yeah.
that's a way that you could do it. Like, people are going to follow Austin, The Rock, and Triple H and Undertaker to SmackDown if that's where they go.
That's fair.
But Raw is what they watch. So, like, it's a good way to get viewership for both at the same time.
Yeah. So I think at this point the plan was like July. The stipulation on the Invasion pay-per-view was going to be if WCW won, they got one of the TV shows, which would have made. I mean, instead they do the Invasion and there's no stipulation, there's no stakes to it.
Yeah, they just do it, and it doesn't
It's
mean
like,
anything.
oh, WCW won. This actually doesn't mean anything at all.
It gives them valuable momentum for nothing.
Yeah, critical momentum. What's
Oh.
always on the line. So on SmackDown that week, they do a fatal four-way TLC match where Benoit and Jericho defend the tag belts against the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian. I think we need to talk about like what WWE does to Chris Benoit over the course of this month and the consequences it ends up having. Like, they just run the guy into the ground here. He's wrestling multiple matches on almost all of these shows, or he's in a TLC match or working a 20-minute TV main event with Steve Austin. He has this insane cage match with Kurt Angle on Raw that we all remember as an amazing match, but the bumps he takes in that match are sick. In this match, in this TLC match, he does a diving headbutt off a ladder through a table out on the floor.
Like, this is stuff that they shouldn't be asking anyone to do, and that's all that they do for a whole thing. I've never seen anybody get work this hard. The only thing that's even a close corollary is what they do to Jeff Hardy during this period, where he's literally in like 43 ladder matches in a year.
Yeah.
They're just using these guys up.
Kurt here is pretty. We'll get into like the gauntlet they put Kurt through too, but like they are killing these guys, and they have no competition now.
Yeah, like, what are you doing this for? Nobody's watching. Chill out. But like, it's so ironic that you pointed this out when we were like doing our pre-show stuff. Like, we were originally going to do the Night of Champions.
Yes. So to peel the curtain back, Hughes had proposed we do Night of Champions 2007, which he wanted to do because Bobby Lashley was in the main event.
Obviously.
And I wanted to do because that's the weekend of the Benoit murder-suicide. That's the show he didn't show up for.
Just to give you a taste of our priorities.
Yeah, so I went way down the Chris Benoit rabbit hole. Like, for like 3 weeks straight, I was just texting you deeply disturbing details.
Yeah, I just like be out at lunch
murders.
and check my phone and Steve would be like, hey, so just so you know, it was probably straight up murder.
I was like,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, Yeah, so like I read books, I listened to podcasts, I watched shoot interviews. I did all this preparation for a show that we'll ultimately never do because I realized there was no way we could like talk about the Benoit murders for an hour and then like talk about Night of Champions.
Yeah, it's the biggest fucking bummer of all time. And we've already covered it in some respect, but like to go down that rabbit hole is something that like maybe one day we could do a podcast on it, but it won't be about that pay-per-view. Because it can't be like, all right, and now after an hour and a half of deeply litigating this man's murder-suicide, let's talk about Johnny Nitro.
Yeah, let's talk about CM Punk versus Johnny Nitro.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, what it comes down, what my thought was, this was a turning point for Chris Benoit.
Yes, absolutely.
This is where he injures his neck, and he has to have surgery, and he misses a year, and he easily could have hung it up here. Like, he would have missed out on, the World Heavyweight title run. He would have missed out on some money, but he easily could have said, okay, I'm lucky to be able to walk. I'm going to give it up and I'm going to be an agent or I'm going to start a wrestling school or whatever. And like, if he had done that, I think he'd be alive today. Like, I just think the critical downfall of him came in those later years on the road and the head injuries. I mean, the wrestler deaths were something he was going to have to endure in any case. Like, he can't undo that.
Or maybe he builds a different support structure if he's not on the road the entire time,
Yeah, maybe he makes some friends outside of wrestling.
I'm not sure people understand the surgery that he has here, which is one that a number of wrestlers have during this period, is a death sentence. And it looms over your career basically from the moment you get this surgery. And what it basically says is that you now have a number of bumps that you can take. And once you get to the end of those bumps, you can't take another one or you might die. Like, your neck is going to gradually weaken and weaken and weaken, and they can't just redo this surgery. And, like, that's what winds up happening to Edge, is, like, he got this spinal fusion, and then he got to the end of his bump card, and he was done.
Yeah.
And so the amount of pressure that puts on you to like be perfect and to get the most possible out of your career while you still have time. And as you start to get like on in years like he did, like the amount of pressure that must put on you to know that like it could be done any second.
They were initially hoping they could do the less serious surgery where they go in through the front of the neck. It's the one Kurt Angle had a couple times.
Yeah.
Turned out his neck was messed up too bad. They had to do the one where they go through the back, and that put him out for a year.
And when Kurt got that, it was still experimental. Like, nobody got that surgery at that time. Like,
they were thinking about it with Benoit here, but didn't go that direction.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to throw that in because that's something that never really gets mentioned. But, like, if you hear people talk who got that surgery, like, it hangs over your head for the rest of your career.
Yeah, and you just wish he had followed the path of his friend Arn Anderson, who had neck surgery, had neck injuries, tried to come back, and then had an experience where he was at the gym and like a friend of his saw him, walked up and like slapped him on the back, was like, hey, how you doing? And his arm went numb from that. And at that point he was just like, I can't get back in the ring. If a slap on the back is causing my arm to go numb, imagine what taking a power bomb is going to do to me.
Yeah. And to get through that, then you get into all the painkillers and the concussions, and we all know the end of the story. But the part that we need to hold WWE's iron to the fire here is to get us back to the show, is that what they're doing here is reprehensible. They're feeding these guys into a wood chipper for nothing.
No, and it's no coincidence that at the end of this show, their roster is decimated, as we'll get into. Everybody's hurt.
Before we get into that, do you know what the tagline of this show is?
Oh, it's something super masochistic.
My muscles ache. Yes. My mind is spent. My body is broken. Lead me to my throne. How appropriate is that?
A fucking electric chair throne. It's gross.
It's something else, man.
Again, like, death just hangs over this show.
And it's not like they don't already know. Like, the people have already started dropping before this show happens. It's just that by the time this show is over, everybody's hurt.
On the May 28th episode of Raw, they broke the glass on the WCW invasion. Lance Storm, of all people, started off
the first shot, yeah,
by interfering in the Steve Blackman and Trish Stratus versus Saturn and Terry match on Raw. Yes, really, that's the kickoff of the WCW invasion.
A nice little reward for people who were still tuned in during that shit.
Yeah. Now, in their defense with this one, it's often forgotten the show was in Calgary, which is, of course, Storm's hometown. So, of course, he gets a huge reaction in Calgary.
But I love the way they did it so much. Like, it's the perfect first shot. This dude who looks like an absolute, like, athlete. Like, he looks awesome. Yeah. He jumps in the ring, he super kicks everybody, and he sprints, not just to the back, out of the arena, like, straight out. He's gone.
And he jumps in the limo with Shane, and they speed off.
It's awesome. It's like such a guerrilla warfare, like, oh shit, we're doing this now? Okay.
Yeah. Also on that night, they revealed that someone was stalking the Undertaker's wife. More on that later.
Oh boy, yep.
Also on that Raw, Austin defended the WWF Championship against Benoit. Benoit had defeated Rhino earlier in the night to earn a shot at the title, so he's doing double duty as he seemingly does on every show leading up to this pay-per-view. Austin retained on a recreation of the Montreal Screwjob when he put Benoit in the crippler crossface and Vince called for the bell. I should throw in that, as I mentioned, the show is in Calgary, and Stu Hart and like half the Hart family are in attendance.
Now, obviously, heat is what we're going for. Like, Vince is literally just sitting in the back like, they don't want to boo Austin. What are the things we can do to get him the most heat imaginable? We have to pour like molten hot lava on him to make this work. So Montreal Screwjob in Calgary in front of the Hart family? Yeah, that's a box you can tick off.
Do you think Bruce Hart pitched, let me fight Austin here?
Yeah, let me shoot fight him in the ring.
Austin would have gotten revenge for that kidney shot back in Calgary.
Oh, believe me, I guarantee you Austin was like, yeah, give me Bruce Hart in 5 minutes.
Yeah, he had an ass whooping ready for Bruce Hart if he started anything. Yeah, this was yet another rift between Brett and the family that they were, I mean, I don't know how much, that they probably didn't know this was going to happen.
Right. I mean, I'm sure Vince just invited him as a make nice,
and then he used him.
Yeah, because like why does he care at this point? What does he have to benefit from the Hart family? He thinks Brett's gone forever.
Yeah, Brett and Benoit apparently went out to dinner that night though, which was probably kind of awkward.
Oh, yeah, that's so awkward.
Yeah, he had to. I'm sure Brett understood. Like Benoit has to do it. He's getting the push of his life. He can't say no here. Like, he should say no to a bunch of this shit they're making him do.
But, like, he's been toiling in the mid-card for so long. Like, he literally, the last time he got a gasp of the main event was Fully Loaded 2000. So, like, you can't blame him for, like, yeah, whatever you want, boss.
Yeah. So, SmackDown after that was in Benoit's hometown of Edmonton. And he goads Austin into giving him a rematch for the title. They proceed to have an absolute classic match. This is the
best
one
TV matches ever.
Yeah, this rules. This is the one where Benoit hits him with 10 straight German suplexes. This is one of the best matches ever on SmackDown.
Oh God, yeah. Like this is one of Austin's best matches of his whole career.
This run for Austin, I mean, his ring work is I think his character work is great too. It just didn't get over because it wasn't what the fans wanted. But this is an amazing run he has this year.
What this proves is that Austin had always been a better heel. And you can almost argue that he never really knew how to wrestle as a face. He kind of he did what he did, but like the babyface Steve Austin character doesn't have good matches. That's not what it's for. But heel Steve Austin could have some of the best matches you've ever seen. And he did all year long. The one against Kurt, fuck.
Austin retained after Benoit was distracted by Vince and Austin rolled him up and grabbed the tights. Great match.
Just so good.
The next Raw was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Vince cut an opening promo, and then Mick Foley interrupted him. Foley came out with one of his MacGuffin unsigned contracts. You remember these?
Vaguely, yeah. Wasn't that just basically like for some reason Linda had given Foley like a bunch of open contracts
when
for whatever
he
he
was
wanted?
Commissioner right before he got fired, he had like signed all these open contracts where he could do anything he wanted, and he had like video of him doing it, and he like held up the day's newspaper to prove it was from that day, and like so this is how he got to referee the Vince Shane match at WrestleMania, and like there's this one, and like he got to do the Braun Panties match at Invasion. There's like one or two others. This pops up a few times.
I mean, it's a smart idea if you need to have like a babyface commissioner do something.
Yeah.
Now that
Which
you fired
you
the only
need to
one yet.
occasionally, since Vince is running the show and he's so corrupt.
Yeah, exactly.
Vince has gotten smart to this. So Foley says he has the right to make the main event on Raw that night. Vince has gotten smart to this, though. He says the contract was signed in Connecticut. It's only valid in Connecticut.
Ooh.
But Foley's got an ace up his sleeve as he brings out Governor Jesse Ventura.
Yes.
Reads the contract and deems that it's valid in the state of Minnesota.
Like, this is what we're talking about. This TV
is genius.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I don't know who's writing this right now, whether it's Brian Gewirtz or who, but like this is some awesome stuff.
Yeah. Gotta love a Jesse appearance.
Yeah.
Anytime. And like this is a great use. It's sad that he didn't also demand that he and Vince do commentary together that night.
Yes. Oh, I saw something else on this contract, Mick. It says that he's got to wear the bow tie.
The match that Foley made was Austin defending the title against Jericho. It was revealed before the match that Foley would be the outside referee. Foley accidentally hit Jericho with a chair while swinging at an interfering William Regal, which allowed Austin to get the pin. Also on that Raw, Hugh Morris interfered in the Kane Christian match to continue the WCW invasion, and he got a huge pop too. Like, let no one say that the invasion wasn't over initially.
Just how awesome one of my favorite things about the invasion initially too is just that they would interfere in matches that you would have no fucking desire to watch in your wildest dreams.
It's very reminiscent of Scott Hall interfering in, what was it, Steve Dahl versus the Mauler.
Yeah. It's just as a reward to keep you tuned in. Like, no matter what we put on, you got to watch it because the invasion could show up at any time.
There's something to that. Like, but the audience has kind of been trained for that in this era, though, because, like, this was a recurring trope that there would be, like, a bunch of jabronis wrestling, and then, like, Kane would just show up and beat them all up. Like, this happens a lot in this era.
Anytime that you would just see like, oh, hey, that's weird, a Steve Blackman versus Taka Michinoku match. Oh, shit, here comes Austin.
On the next SmackDown, Jericho and Benoit had to run a tag team gauntlet as they beat the APA, Rhino and Big Show, and then Steve Austin and Vince McMahon.
When we say that the Chris Benoit thing is reprehensible, it absolutely is. But the problem is that Benoit and Jericho are getting so wildly over from this.
It's working.
Yeah, because they finally figured out, like, oh, we'll get Benoit over just by having him have amazing matches all the time.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, but you can't just have amazing matches 50 times a night and live through that. And Jericho is the personality that Benoit needs. So they're kind of like a dream team, to be honest.
It is. I mean, Jericho is honestly not as good a wrestler as he ever got credit for. Like, I've always thought Chris Jericho was overrated in the ring. But
I agree. During
great
this period,
personality, and like, yeah, him and Benoit make a perfect duo because Benoit is every bit as good as people thought in the ring.
Yeah, and just together, and they have great chemistry. And, like, the Canadian Chris's branding, like the last survivors of the dungeon, like, it just works.
You even get a little bit of personality out of Benoit when he's with Jericho.
Yeah, because sometimes people could pull personality of Benoit. Eddie could pull it out. Jericho could pull it out. Like when Benoit could just forget there was a camera on him, it almost seemed like he could figure out how to have a personality.
So on Raw, it was announced that at King of the Ring, Austin would defend against both Benoit and Jericho in a triple threat match. And then Benoit faced Angle in a steel cage match in the main event. This match was insane. Benoit did a diving headbutt off the cage. Angle did a moonsault off the cage. There were like 5 suplexes off the cage. These guys just killed each other for this like meaningless match.
Like if you think about what Kurt Angle, if you look at Kurt Angle today, and he's basically like a walking statue because all of his joints are fucked so bad. And like obviously Benoit we've covered. Like you could trace it back to this match maybe more than anything else. Like they're never the same physically after this. Like Kurt basically periodically gets injured every 6 months for the rest of his career after this because like it just destroys your body. Like you can't do this.
Also on that Raw, the Undertaker's Sarah's stalker was revealed. It's me, it's DDP.
Okay, so let's talk about this because we have maybe the most opposite perspectives on this that could possibly be. I had no idea who the Undertaker stalker was. I kind of thought honestly that it was Vince. But now that I'm not like 13 anymore, I understand that doesn't make any fucking sense.
I think I had a similar theory at the time. It just kind of made sense. Like Vince is a bad guy, and him and Taker have been feuding. I don't know where that would have gone though.
Yeah, but like the idea that it was gonna be like a WCW guy, despite the invasion, just never occurred to me because it hadn't been personal like that yet. It was still just like random dudes showing up, right?
I don't really think there's nobody jumps out at me from WCW who like that makes sense for personality wise.
We were thinking about it, and like the only people I could come up with like Goldust and Kevin Sullivan, and those are 2 dudes they weren't bringing in here.
Yeah, Raven was the guy I was thinking of, but I need to reveal my theory at the time.
Okay, guys, if you've ever played the Lawcast drinking game, you need to get your shots ready right now. Steve, who did you think was the mystery stalker?
Shawn Michaels.
You son of a bitch!
I always thought it was every mystery. I thought it was Shawn Michaels coming back.
I'm so happy.
Let's recall that going into WrestleMania, they did bring him to TV to do something with Triple H and Undertaker. It's unclear if he was supposed to wrestle or if he was like just going to manage Triple H against Undertaker, but there were rumors they were going to bring him back at this time. But then he showed up and he was messed up on some stuff, so they sent him home.
Now, in fairness, I can't blame you for that because at least he's a name who's floating around at this point.
Oh, it would have been if he unmasked. I mean, it would have been kind of weird, but he unmasks and he does the Shawn Michaels dance.
And if he had just been like, Undertaker, you took my fucking career.
Yeah,
you injured my back in that casket match.
An interesting dark twist to him, actually. Like, he'd never played a character like that before.
Yeah. Just to, like, have him go, like, full evil and just be like, fuck you, fuck this company, I'm going to take you to hell.
Yeah, you took my career, I'm going to take everything that matters to you.
What we didn't know is this is right around the time he's getting born again, so that's probably not going to work.
You know who doesn't give a fuck about that? DDP. DDP will do anything to work.
So the moment that he snatches the hood off of his face, and this is such an exciting segment, just to paint you a word picture, he comes down with like a black hood over his face and just
riding the Undertaker's motorcycle that he stole.
And just slowly, quietly gets into the ring. And, like, there isn't anything physically to indicate who this guy is. He's got all his tattoos covered up. He's a tall guy, but he's not, like, he doesn't have, like, a particularly notable physique. And he gets in the ring and he just stands there for, like, 30 seconds. And, like, the crowd is just buzzing wildly. And he whips it off, and the crowd is... there aren't a lot of times in wrestling that the crowd is genuinely stunned. like cannot believe what they're seeing in front of them. This is one
They
of those.
explode.
It's just they're so happy to see him,
Yeah.
and also like it's the last thing they expected.
And it's a real star, which like so far the WCW Invasion segments have been Lance Storm, Hugh Morris, and Stacy Keibler. Like, okay, but when are we getting to the real guys? Well, now we got one.
And he's gonna fight the Undertaker, and that kicks ass.
Like,
in theory.
As much as it's weird that DDP's gimmick is now that he's a pervert.
I mean, they could have. What they should have done, and I think everyone understands that, is that DDP should have just been at this point like, I don't give a shit about your wife, Taker. I just wanted to stir you up.
Yeah. And instead, they very much go down that, like, he's a weirdo stalker thing. Like, that becomes his character.
Which is, it rings so false to anyone who had been watching DDP and his fine-ass wife for, like, the last 10 years.
Well, the Gold Club scandal was in the headlines at this time, but DDP wasn't implicated in that, although Eric Bischoff was.
I mean, it should have, yeah, that's what it should have been, is like, hey, Taker, I just want to swap wives with you. What do you think, brother?
It actually could have been Bischoff.
Oh, my God.
It would have been a horrible way to debut him.
Here's the funniest thing, though. When he whipped the bag off of his head, and I was little Cush watching at home, I did not know who this was.
I mean, I didn't recognize him either at first, just because he had cut his hair, and like I just was not expecting DDP. Like,
and they do like the mega zoom in on his face, and he's got like his eyes like bulging out. And he's like, ah.
Yeah, he didn't look like himself. But yeah, then I lost my shit because my God, DDP is in the WWF.
This is one of the moments that actually drove me into becoming a smart fan, because I hit the internet like as soon as the show was over, like, who the fuck was that guy?
Yeah.
And I vaguely recognized him because I had seen him on like Pro Wrestling Illustrated covers before.
Yeah.
But like I didn't really like, I knew academically about WCW, it just didn't mean anything to me. And like now all of a sudden it did, and I was like, oh shit, I got to do research. Who the fuck is this? Who the fuck is this?
All right. So some odds and ends before we get into the show. Tough Enough debuted the week of this pay-per-view on MTV. Did you watch the original Tough Enough when it aired?
Rabidly.
I loved
every episode. I love this show so much. I am a diehard reality show watcher. That's just the case, and generally not like The Bachelor or anything like that. I'm talking about like Rock of Love and like the trashier side of reality TV. So I was all about Tough Enough.
Yeah. Loved this show. I mean, they had some bad luck with it. Just seemed like somebody got hurt like barely anybody got voted off because like just every week somebody would get hurt or they would quit.
And I don't think that they understood. That's the funniest thing, is that actual wrestling training, like if like 20 people sign up, maybe 2 people graduate.
Yeah. And like these weren't wrestlers. Like in later years, they started taking people who had actually been trained.
Or like athletes even.
Yeah.
Like,
these are just people for the most part. And like, yeah, they get in the ring and they start doing training and it just wrecks their bodies.
Because that's what it does. Like being a wrestler, the only reason wrestlers are able to do what they do is that like their bodies built up a resistance to taking bumps all the time just through repetition. Like you basically reshape your spine to like meet the demands of what you're doing. It's not natural to fall on canvas 150,000 times in one day.
No.
And like Maven was a fucking school teacher and he wins this thing.
Yeah. Maven, were there 2 winners? Did Maven
it was him and Nydia.
Maven and Nydia, and yes, it was season 2 was Jackie Gata and Linda Miles. Was anybody else notable on this show?
On this one?
Chris Nowinski was the runner-up.
Yes. And Chris Nowinski was the one who was going to become a star, except concussions totally derailed his career.
He's made a lot of his life otherwise, done some very good deeds.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a huge Tough Enough fan. I'm obsessed with the Steve Austin season.
One day we're going to do a podcast just about that. Maybe we'll just do like a watch along podcast where we watch the whole fucking season and just do like recaps of it, because it's beautiful.
Just when it would come down to like who's going to get cut and they'd get in the ring with their belts, and Austin would cut a promo on them on like why they were going to get cut. That was so perfect. And somehow they never did it again.
Like it was the perfect layout. And like not all of the challenges were about learning in the ring, because that's not something that's not even what they were necessarily looking for. They're looking for superstars. Like they can teach them later.
Yeah.
And like almost everybody on that season wound up giving like an actual look, because like I think it turned out like more actual people than any of the other seasons had.
And then they did another season a couple years later, and it was the disaster season where they changed the format and made it like super American Idol-ish with a crowd, and like Hogan was initially the host, and then the N-word tape came out and they had to fire him. It was not good times.
Not good times, man.
Also, Chyna left the company. Her contract ran out, and they were very far apart on money. Also, like, obviously Triple H is with Stephanie by this point. That's real awkward for her.
Yeah, just a little bit. That's her boss.
Yeah. Unfortunately, her life pretty much spiraled out of control from here, and yeah, she ends up dead. It's tragic.
I don't know what Chyna would have wound up being able to do during this period. I don't know that she would have been a good fit for this company post WrestleMania 17.
It's tough because they've moved her away from wrestling men. Like they've moved her. I don't know where her in the women's division was really gonna go.
There is no women's division. WCW certainly didn't have one to bring over. Like it's
her and Lita.
Yeah, women's wrestling kind of ceases to exist until like 2003, and like that wasn't really going to change with Chyna there. So like if you're not going to have her wrestle men, then okay, like I guess you cut bait. But like it's still very weird, and not enough is made of the fact that somebody who was over on that level, and still was at WrestleMania 17, she was mega over with the crowd.
Yeah.
To just like throw her on the scrap heap because of a personal relationship between two people who doesn't even include her, just because you think it will be awkward, is just fucking odd.
Also, Eddie Guerrero showed up to an episode of Raw intoxicated and was sent home. That would ultimately lead to his release in the fall. I think, is this when he has his car accident and gets his DUI?
It is indeed, because by 2002 he'll be in Ring of Honor trying to piece his career back together.
And he'll clean up and get back into the WWF and make the most of it, as we know.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I had forgotten I was watching one of the Raws leading up to this, and he was on there. It's like I did not remember he was still with the company at this point.
And like they didn't really have anything for him to do. He's just kind of drifting anyway. Yeah. So it wasn't exactly hard for them to cut bait. But it's doing that for him was probably the greatest gift they could have given him. If they kept him on this roster, he probably would have died.
No, he needed this to wake him up.
Yeah.
Also, the XFL folded for the first time.
That's so fun and relevant because that shit just happened again.
Yeah, XFL Round 2, I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the air, much better than XFL Round 1. Like, XFL Round 2 was an honest success.
It actually could have worked. Like, unfortunately, this whole situation has basically killed it because it had no opportunity to succeed, and, like, it didn't have any money to survive off of without actually playing the games. That sucks. But it had a shot.
Yeah. Way better than the initial version, which absolutely sucked.
The initial version is one of the worst things ever to air on television. It just is.
True garbage sports. Just trashy, unwatchable football.
Yep. And then it only got worse as time went on, and we're looking at like the cheerleaders' locker room and shit. Like the worst of wrestling paired with the worst of football is such a poisonous combination.
All right. After all that, we can finally get into the show. It's Sunday, June 24th, 2001. We are at the Continental Airlines Arena, also known as the Meadowlands, in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Sellout crowd, 17,777 on hand. Showed us 445,000 buys, which I thought was a surprisingly strong number.
It's so funny that the buys are like dead, like 300,000 flat at Backlash, Ray's at Judgment Day, Ray's here, and then they get a huge bi-rated invasion. You would think that that's such a symbol of like, oh man, we're killing it. Like, this is amazing.
Dead by the fall, though, with the invasion.
Because they burned through everything.
Unforgiven, No Mercy, and Survivor Series all bomb.
Because the invasion was it. They blew everything there.
On commentary, the phenomenal team of Jim Ross and Paul Heyman. Love these guys together.
Probably the best commentary team of all time. I'm sorry, Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. I'm sorry.
They're just on fire. They're so good. They were not together for very long, but it was so good while it lasted.
They hate each other so much.
It's insane that they brought Jerry Lawler back. Insane that they got rid of Paul Heyman.
If I may, I just want to say that the reason Jerry Lawler comes back, and this is a conspiracy theory, if that's what you want to say, but because Lawler saw that they didn't need him and was suddenly like, I better come back now.
There's nowhere else to work.
Principled stand, and it did not work out for him.
And his wife, who he had left in solidarity with, left him.
Yep. So it was like, oh shit. I better come back while they still think they need me, because fuck, they might not for much longer.
On Heat, Matt Hardy defeated Just Incredible to retain the European Championship in 7 minutes and 51 seconds. That doesn't sound too bad, actually.
Just Incredible didn't really get a fair shake at all.
Do you have any thoughts on Just Incredible coming into WWE? Like, I was just kind of naively expecting him to be pushed as a star because I'm like, well, he was ECW champion. Like, why wouldn't he be a main eventer in WWE?
In fairness, like, Just Incredible, we've talked before about some of the worst looks in wrestling history. Just Incredible looks like a jabroni, and like that, there's nothing in the world that was going to change that.
So they put him in tights here. Does he look better or worse than he did in jean shorts?
I mean, that's a good question.
Jean shorts were over back then, I feel like. I feel like you could be a badass and wear jean shorts in the 90s.
I do know that him wearing tights and teaming with X-Pac also wearing tights made them both look like assholes.
And with white socks, like, pulled all the way up over his tights for some reason.
And we literally can't go any further without referencing their theme song, which is the greatest in wrestling history.
Uncle Cracker's What You Looking At?
Hey, yo, you dealing with the X Factor.
I got everything I ever wanted, and I'd never give that back.
Well, I know you hate X Factor, but you ain't gotta go and be like that.
I said you ain't gotta look at me like that. Did they actually record a different version where he said X Factor?
Yes.
Because this is a real song.
Yes, it is. And they literally contacted him after he agreed to use it and were like, hey, will you put X Factor in your song? And he was like, sure.
So I don't understand. Like, how did this happen? We're like, Pac and Credible are old clique buddies. Are they like driving to the show in their rental car and like, I don't know, Credible puts in a burn CD with some Uncle Kracker on it and they hear this song and they're like, that's what we need to come out to?
What I think it is this was a genuine attempt for X-Pac to get his own stable and to step out on his own. Like, they actually tried with this. Like, I know it's one of the biggest failures of all time, but just understand that X-Pac still had some juice in him. Like, it was only 2 years before, not even 2, like a year and a half before this where X-Pac was one of the biggest acts in the company, right? Yeah. So they're like, let's give him a heel stable.
He has heat. Like, he's getting X-Pac sucks. Of course, debatable whether it's X-Pac heat, but I don't really want to get into that right now.
They give him Albert, who they, like, the people in the back think is, like, the fucking greatest prospect of all time. They give him Just Incredible, who's his clique buddy and who he has good chemistry with, and they're just like, we're going to give you, like, we're going to put some money into an actual licensed song for you.
Michael Hayes. Somebody compared
That's
these
who it was.
To Freebirds, right?
It had to have been Michael Hayes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was all just an attempt to get
There's
heat.
No Michael Hayes in this group, though. Like, X-Pac is not Michael Hayes.
Yeah, like, this was all an attempt to get heat, I'm sure. And I'm sure, like, somebody brought the song to Vince and he was like, oh, that song sucks. It's perfect.
Yeah.
But, like, it doesn't click in such an extraordinary way. No stable has ever clicked less.
The purple flashing lights for the entrance too.
It's just wretched. They're all wearing the stupidest outfit possible. They don't match. They don't look like a stable. Nobody in the stable's interesting or can cut a promo.
X Factor.
Fucking X-Pac. It's just become such a punchline. And I feel bad because everyone in it has done extraordinary things in their career. But just for this like 6-month period, they were all in this joke of a group.
It is one of the worst stables of all time, though.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
definitely down there. I think it's got to be in the bottom 10.
And like, thank God all of this other stuff happens because they may have actually tried to push X Factor as like a thing.
The opening package goes over the matches on this night with a disembodied voice saying, "My muscles ache, my mind is spent, my body is broken, lead me to my throne." This is where we get into my complaint with like the aesthetic of this era, that everything had to be like grungy and trashy. Like King of the Ring, what a classy event. Like it's royal, it's regal, and instead the set is a giant electric chair.
That's literally what this is. And like, look, I get during the Attitude Era, that stuff paid off with great aplomb, right? Everything was skulls and darkness, and like, I get it. WWE takes a lot of years to realize that that era is over, long after it actually was. The same with like the Limp Biscuits of the world and stuff like that. Like they go to the well with that stuff way after their fans are ready to move on from it.
We open the show with DDP coming out of the crowd. Paul Heyman asks why a WCW wrestler is being allowed to open a WWF show, and he has a point.
Yeah, he has a great point.
They explain that The Undertaker has threatened everyone, including Vince McMahon, to get them to allow Paige to be there tonight.
That's such a great reason.
Yes.
Because it's the most believable thing imaginable.
Oh, like, everybody's scared shitless of Undertaker.
Because, okay, the beginning of this build, like the whole pervert angle is weird. But like when you get to this pay-per-view, and The Undertaker is the maddest he's ever been in his whole life, because no one's ever gotten personal with him like this before. You've built to something interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
he's
potentially
gonna kill this guy.
Yeah. And like you could have drawn this out like much longer than this. It's just the idea that like he wants to murder DDP so bad and he just can't get his hands on him. And then eventually you put him like Hell in a Cell at SummerSlam, right? Like something like that. And unfortunately, they decide, okay, we'll get to that. I'm sorry. But
DDP says that the footage of Sarah that aired on TV was only the PG stuff, and he's got much better stuff in his private collection.
Why have him double down? I know why. It's because Vince loved this.
Oh, he's gonna get his wife. He wants to fuck her. Fuck her good.
Imagine you're DDP and you roll in, and like you're finally in WWE. It's where he'd always wanted to be. And like you're there and you're like, oh man, I'm coming in as a top star. Maybe I'll work with Rock, because he and Rock had always wanted to work together.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of why he came in.
And like all of this stuff, and you come into Vince's office and he's like, you're gonna want to fuck the Undertaker's wife. You're gonna stalk her. You're gonna be in the bushes with a camera.
Relatedly, do you know who did the voiceovers?
Is it Vince?
It was Vince.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So Vince literally was doing the voiceovers of a pervert sitting in the bushes watching the Undertaker's
masturbating,
wife.
If we're being honest.
Because
breathing very heavily.
Jesus Christ. Like, you're not being perverted enough. Let me show you how it's done.
I love the idea that he originally had like Finkel or Pritchard do it, and he was like, no, I'll show you how to do it.
I would love so much the idea that he had Finkel actually sit in the bushes with the camera. More perverted, Fink. More.
He says he's going to kick Undertaker's ass all over his yard tonight, and that tomorrow night on Raw, he'll be the first WCW wrestler to ever set foot in Madison Square Garden. He says he's got a ticket tonight. He's sitting in the front row. and he's got a sign that says "Make me famous," and he takes his seat.
And okay, that's the Undertaker's catchphrase at this time is "He'll make you famous."
Like he did Mick Foley.
It's a perfectly fine catchphrase, right? The problem is that DDP is already famous.
Yeah.
His motivation for all of this makes no sense.
Yeah.
And you can't just pretend that it does.
We go to the announce table where JR and Heyman say that there's a rumor going around that either Jericho or Benoit has been secretly negotiating with WCW, and that one of them could win the title tonight and defect with it. What'd you make of this being the running storyline through the night?
It was very smart because it gave a reason for Benoit and Jericho not to just be a team, right? And I love the idea of that kind of paranoia running as a through line through this period. Because, of course, that's how you would feel, right? That's how the actual Monday Night Wars were. Like, who's really on our side or who's chasing the money?
And Vince has fucked both these guys so many times. Why wouldn't they leave?
Yeah. And, like, they were both, you associate them as WCW guys even before WWE.
Yeah.
So, of course, and so, like, Austin's losing his shit. And, like, Vince is losing his mind because 2 out of the 3 people in this match, if they win the belt, they could defect and, like, get a huge check for it, and no one would be able to blame them. They would be baby faces for abandoning Vince. He could get screw job in reverse, and there's nothing he could do about it.
And then our opening match is a King of the Ring semifinal. We have made it over like an hour into this podcast and not even mentioned the tournament is how much of an afterthought it is this year.
Oh, hey guys, the King of the Ring. That's what the title is.
Yeah, I mean, you understand why they got rid of this pay-per-view when like the tournament just had got to the point where nobody cared. I mean, I don't want to say nobody cared, but like Vince clearly didn't care.
Yeah. Here's one of the most interesting things to me, okay, is Vince did take the King of the Ring seriously enough that whoever appeared in the Final Four is basically a picture of who he thought was worth pushing in the next year. It was basically a picture of, like, who in the mid-card does he see pushing, right? And it's all people from the same heel stable. Like, Kurt Angle, Christian, Edge, and Rhino are literally basically a team called Team Wreck and have been for, like, a year now. It's so odd.
It is weird to have. These guys are all bona fide heels. Like, Edge is turning face, but, like, it's 4 heels in the semifinals here. That is very strange.
And Angle, Christian, and Rhino are heels. They're not turning face anytime soon.
Kurt is trying to win the tournament for the second year in a row. He advanced with wins over Hardcore Holly and Jeff Hardy. Christian has advanced with wins over Kane and The Big Show. Yes, really.
Yeah, they were screw job wins. But hey, he still got them.
A couple minutes in, Shane comes down to ringside. Kurt gets distracted by Shane and misses a moonsault. Kurt counters the Unprettier and gets Christian in the ankle lock. Christian gets the ropes. Kurt pulls him up and goes to the angle slam, but Christian slips out and hits the Unprettier. He makes the cover, but Shane pulls Christian off Kurt in an interesting twist. Kurt then hits the angle slam for the pin. We then realize Shane has now guaranteed that Kurt is going to have to wrestle again before he gets to have his match against Shane.
I loved that idea, that like Shane is just like, I can't beat Kurt one-on-one, but maybe if I make him wrestle for half an hour first, I'll have a shot.
Yeah. So it turns out that Kurt suffered a concussion during the match here, during a belly-to-belly suplex, and he proceeds to wrestle 2 more matches here tonight.
Yeah, he sure does.
Yeah, he's also got torn knee cartilage from doing the moonsault off the cage. Like, even just at the end of this match, which was only like 8 minutes long and not super notable, he looks gassed. Like, he looks totally out of it after this match, and understandably, because he's concussed.
Yeah, we're going to cover this way more as we continue on to the 2 other matches that he's going to have during the course of this night. But by the time he gets to the end, it's It's one of the most remarkable gutsy performances, just that he gets through this night. All the attention's obviously going to go to Shane, and reasonably so. But like, these guys are walking like medic tents. It doesn't make sense. Like, Kurt Angle should have gotten 6 months off after this just to heal up. And instead, the entire invasion is going to revolve around him 2 months from now.
We see Steve Austin and Deborah backstage. Coach comes in to ask Austin about his triple threat match. Coach asks about Vince not being there tonight, and Austin says he will be there. And then Coach asks about the rumors of Benoit and Jericho defecting. And I believe this is the birth of Austin's what catchphrase?
I believe it is, yes. The most cursed catchphrase in wrestling history.
It's been the one good thing about having no fans in the stands the last few months. No fucking what chance.
And I mean, they had petered out over the years. And like, Austin himself played a part in finally killing it dead.
Yeah.
And it would be fun when Austin was there. But like, I went to a show before WrestleMania 17. It was a show in DC, and literally it was what chance from the moment the first match started until the end of the night. It was horrifying.
Who goes to a wrestling show so they can chant what? A lot of people, apparently.
It's the worst, man. I mean, it was fun at the time, but like, that was like literally this year. To be doing it 5 years later, what is the matter with you?
There's a recap of the Undertaker, Sarah, DDP, Stalker saga, and then Paul Heyman goes to interview DDP, but he's interrupted when Stalker footage of him from earlier in the day plays on the Titantron.
Yep.
That becomes a very lame running segment of the night.
Mm.
Next up, we've got the other King of the Ring semifinal as Edge takes on Rhino. Edge advanced with wins over Test and Perry Saturn. Rhino got here with wins over Taz and Tajiri.
Not impressive wins.
Not a terribly loaded tournament, if we're being honest.
And actually, this is very important, because what it shows is that while it feels like WWE is so on top of the world right now, their mid-card has been decimated by injury, by a lot of these guys getting pressed into service in the main event. Like, it's actually very thin after like the top 10 guys.
They've got Edge. Like, that's a good one. He's on his way to stardom.
It's amazing that Edge doesn't get there for like 4 more years. Because here it seems like he's being coronated and it's going to happen like by the end of this year. Like, it wouldn't have shocked you watching this if he had like won the Vengeance unification match later on in this year. He doesn't actually get a real push because he gets thrown completely on the scrap heap basically as soon as the invasion comes along. Like, he and Christian get swept immediately under the rug.
Rhino beats up Edge both in and out of the ring. Then he exposes the middle turnbuckle. I think Ray Charles could have seen that this was going to end poorly.
Yep.
Rhino continues to hold the advantage after ramming Edge's head into the exposed turnbuckle. I've just never grasped why that's supposed to hurt so much.
The exposed turnbuckle?
It's just this tiny little metal ring. Like,
yeah, especially when they're getting knock
you out. These guys get punched in the face 50 times per night.
And they're getting catapulted into the stairs in every single match, which seems like it would hurt way more than this.
Rhino hits a splash off the top rope. I had forgotten he used to do that.
Rhino had a moment here where it seemed like he was going to become like a real person.
Yeah.
And again, the invasion kind of throws him in the scrap heap.
He gets some push during the invasion because he's one of the only credible guys in the alliance. But then he has a neck injury and he has the match with Jericho at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
And then I think he's done with his neck after that.
And he's not the same after that, obviously.
By the time he comes back, the moment's just kind of passed.
And yeah. If you know that I hate Rhino, just know it's not during this period. It's
No, he
during the
rules at this point.
yeah, like the Gore kicks so much ass. He's got like way more moves than you think he does. He's not having like great matches, but he's such a great like enforcer. Like he just comes out and gores the shit out of people, and I would watch that all day. It's just the lazy, like broken down Rhino later on is just a
The War Machine from TNA.
I don't hate any character in wrestling history as much as I hate the War Machine Rhino. It's the worst wrestling character that ever existed. The leader of the front line, the War Machine Rhino.
The other thing that made him so great here was the way Heyman would put over the Gore. Like Heyman just screaming, Gore! Gore! Gore!
It just made it seem so much impressive. And like, there weren't a lot of really violent physical finishers during this period. Like nobody was doing like huge mega clotheslines. Like the APA wasn't really around anymore. Most of the finishers had become like submissions or like
compared to Edge's like running hug spear.
Yes. And like Edge would get better at the spear over time, but Rhino puts his spear in the trash and always did.
Edge goes to the top. Rhino cuts him off. Edge hits a sunset flip power bomb. They go for spears at the same time and they hit each other. I really liked that spot.
Yeah, I really like that too.
Rhino goes for a spear. He misses and hits the exposed turnbuckle. Edge hits the Impaler DDT. This will later get a very ridiculous name. The Edgecution, I believe it would be.
Okay, is this the time where I have to reveal something embarrassing? My name, Cush, comes from this stupid-ass wrestling move. My original name online was Educutioner. I still have that as my email to this day. Is educutioner@gmail.com. Hit me up, guys. And
who would have thought when you were choosing a screen name in like 2001 that you'd be, might as well change your name to it?
Yeah. See, I didn't really think that my in front of thousands of people on a weekly basis, people would know me by a shortening of a stupid ass wrestling move that Edge did in 2001. But that's my identity, guys. That's me.
Edge gets the pin to advance to the tournament final. That was a pretty good match. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. I mean, there isn't a bad match on this show. We should probably mention that. Like
everything's just like the overall product is just not doing well.
Yeah. But like there's no time that you turn on wrestling during this year, even as they make bad decision after bad decision, where what you're watching isn't good. Like there's just so much talent. And there's like every character is over. Like even in this next match, like everyone in it is so crazy over, despite the fact that they probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, so we get a recap of Heat from earlier tonight, where Spike Dudley challenged Bubba and Devon to a match for the tag titles. The brothers have been tough on him lately. They don't like that he's dated Molly Holly. I really enjoyed Spike and Molly as a couple. They had some real, like, good, innocent chemistry.
Yeah, and, like, Spike having to, like, man up and, like, stand up to all the bullies, and that was his whole deal.
He gets a little feud with Austin here.
Yeah, the moment where he stands up to Austin, like slaps the coffee out of his hand is like one of the coolest moments from this year. And he just gets wrecked by Austin.
Yeah, Austin proceeds to just rock his shit. It's great.
It's
awesome. Taz interviews Chris Jericho. Jericho does a promo where he keeps teasing that he's going to confirm or deny the rumors that he's leaving for WCW, but he just ends up not saying anything. So he keeps being like, I am absolutely not going to say anything about that.
Yep.
There is no way I'm going to tell you what the answer is.
It would have... You and I both agree that Chris Jericho defecting to WCW to become the leader of the Alliance might have saved the invasion.
It's what they needed.
And, like, I don't even think that Jericho was that unbelievable a performer at this point. I'm not even sure he was necessarily ready, because his title run later in the year kind of indicated that he just wasn't ready to be that level performer yet. But at least he had the personality to carry a brand. And, like, what they do with Austin just flat doesn't work. But like if they do it with Jericho and it feels like the next generation group, maybe you have something, you know? Jericho and Van Dam, like that's something. What they do is what they do. But you and I are both heavily in camp. They should have done that. They had the opportunity here.
Next up, for the tag titles, we've got the Dudley Boys defending against Spike Dudley and a mystery partner. Bubba and Devon won the belts on SmackDown when Austin interfered to cost Benoit and Jericho.
Yep.
Kane is Spike's mystery partner. That was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, that was really fun. This is during the period where Kane was literally just a surprise partner / opponent. That's all he did.
Yeah. Kane, I believe it. Yeah, Kane is the Intercontinental Champion still. He's going to drop the belt to Albert shortly after this, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's gonna be good.
Spike stupidly rushes the ring and gets his ass kicked.
Spike's utter determination to get his ass kicked in every situation is one of the most endearing things about him. Is like I can't remember an offensive move that he's ever performed in his whole career other than the Dudley Dog. But it doesn't matter.
Spike eventually manages to tag in Kane, who of course comes in hot. Bubba and Devon powder. Kane manages to throw Spike like over the top onto both of them. Spike manages to hit the acid drop on Bubba, but Devon breaks up that pin. They then 3D Spike and get the pin. Fun match with a good storyline. I was honestly kind of surprised Kane and Spike didn't win here. Just the way things went in this era. They changed titles a lot.
I mean, this is just a nice, fun mid-card pay-per-view match. Like, this is kind of what the Dudley Boys did until they got, like, you know, real puffy. But, like, this is what they were for. It's just that, you know, you'd have, like, a nice match in the main event, and you'd be like, cool, let's move on.
Bubba and Devon set up a table, but Kane cuts them off. Kane comes in with a choke slam through the table. I feel like the Spike and Molly storyline just kind of got lost in the invasion.
Like, I think we can say that about a lot of stuff because they had all these storylines set up that they were going to go with until they, like, hot-shotted the invasion. So all of this stuff just gets kind of tossed by the wayside, which is unfortunate because a lot of it had potential. The alternate SummerSlam we could have had that had, like, Edge versus Christian as, like, a major fixture on the card and, like, something to do with that storyline and, like, Triple H versus Austin or whatever they were going to do.
Maybe Rock versus Triple H versus Austin.
Yeah, it could have been genuinely special. It's a shame that we'll never get to see what that could have been.
In the back, Christian wishes Edge good luck in the King of the Ring final. You didn't get to talk about how disgusting Christian looks.
But he does, though. This is the worst Christian look. Like,
so gross.
He's got the long, greasy, stringy hair. He's wearing, like, the mesh shirt, but, like, the mismatching tights that don't fit him right.
The giant sunglasses.
This is as bad a look as any mainstream wrestler has ever had. And, like, the testament that makes to his in-ring ability, that they still push him, despite the fact that Vince would probably rather push a big load of dog shit.
More stalker footage of DDP airs, and he gets very upset. It didn't feel at all natural that he would care about. Like, it's just like him, like, having coffee and, like, walking to his rental car. He's in public.
And I get the idea. Yeah. See, I don't even really get the idea. Because, like, why does it bother him that anyone's taking paparazzi footage of him? He doesn't care about that.
No.
He's antagonizing the Undertaker. And the idea that they do, like, the big reveal at the end that it's Sarah who's been videotaping him. It's like, okay.
What a shock.
Who gives a shit?
Billy Gunn is at WWF New York. He, of course, won the 1999 King of the Ring. He then complains that he wasn't even allowed to enter the tournament this year and walks off.
I mean, that's a really good complaint to have.
Has a point, doesn't he?
It's pretty fair.
That is very disrespectful to the one Billy Gunn.
If I were him, if I were WWE, I would not have brought Billy Gunn on here because you don't want a reminder for the fans that the King of the Ring doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, true. This is used to set up a match between him and Edge the next night, where Edge
Billy
calls
Bitch
him
Cakes.
Billy Bitch Cakes,
Which is the moment Edge turns face for real, because the fans love that so much.
What a great turn of phrase.
I'm amazed that didn't follow Billy Gunn for the rest of his career.
Next up, we've got the King of the Ring tournament final as Edge takes on Kurt Angle. Kurt gets on the mic before the match. He apologizes to Edge for getting mad last week. He says he doesn't want anything to get in the way of their friendship. He says he's got a street fight against Shane later, and there's no way Edge is going to be able to beat him tonight, so Edge should just forfeit for his own good and let Christian win the tournament, or let Kurt win the tournament.
That doesn't happen.
Edge takes a second to think on that, and then he decks Kurt. Bell rings, and we're off. Kurt quickly gets the advantage, kind of grinds Edge down on the mat. Edge makes a comeback as Christian comes down to ringside. The ref gets bumped. Angle gets Edge in the ankle lock. Edge taps, but the ref doesn't see it. Kurt breaks the hold to check on the ref, at which point Shane McMahon shows up and spears Kurt. Edge follows up with the Impaler DDT to get the win and win the tournament. Big pop for Edge winning. Huge moment in his career.
I think people really were ready to cheer for Edge and have him break out of this Edge and Christian thing, because that team had kind of run its course.
Yeah. They'd been teaming for a couple of years at this point.
And like we mentioned, like ever since the moment Edge walked into this company, it's so fucking obvious he's a star.
Yeah, you take one look at the guy, you know he's money.
It's
so kind of amazing it took him this long to get a singles push.
And it literally is that I think that they just felt like they had money in the bank. Like he was their like break if you need a new star, like, and they never really needed it.
No, they just hadn't needed it yet. But like without the invasion, imagine how far he could go this year.
Yeah. Like I said, like I wouldn't have been shocked for him to like main event next year's WrestleMania.
Could have gotten a run against Austin this fall.
Because like he's just that hot. And again, like he's got everything. He's got the promos, he's got the size, he's got the wrestling skill. Like he's starting to like put together like a moveset that people really like. Like he's got everything.
Taz is backstage with Chris Benoit. Taz asks about the rumor that Benoit is leaving for WCW. Benoit says that that's a good question and then walks away.
Again, no one would have blamed either of them for defecting because WWE treated them like fucking garbage. And the owner of WWE was literally the manager of the team they were just feuding with.
Yeah. Next up, for the Light Heavyweight Championship, we've got Jeff Hardy defending against X-Pac. What the fuck is this?
Would you say that you got everything you ever wanted?
And I would never give it back.
But I do hate X Factor, and I don't like this.
The recent history. Let's just go over the entire history of the light heavyweight title. The initial champion is Pero Aguayo in Japan, which is this title is defended in Japan and Mexico for years and years. And at some point, Ultimo Dragon actually holds it while he's wrestling in WCW because it's part of the J Crown.
The J Crown, which for a brief period of time was arguably the most important championship in the world. And it wasn't just one championship, it was 8. Yeah. So that was
different, like junior heavyweight title belts.
Only 2 men ever held it, Sasuke and Dragon, and that was it.
Yeah. So the initial champion is Taka Michinoku. He beats Brian Christopher in a tournament final at D-Generation X in your house in December 1997. He holds the title for nearly a year. He loses it to Christian at Judgment Day in October 1998.
And Christian's debut.
Yeah. Christian only holds the belt for 30 days, though, before losing it to Gilbert on Raw.
Who goes on a streak of being undefeated that puts Goldberg in the trash. 448 days.
Yeah. The question was always, who's first? And... the belt's just a joke already. Look, there have been 3 champions, and they've put it on this, joke gimmick jobber. He never defends this title. They have to, find him when they decide to bring the belt back in 2000, and he loses it to S.A. Rios on Heat in February. Then Dean Malenko beats S.A. Rios a month later on Raw. Malenko loses the belt a month after that to Scotty 2 Hotty on Raw. Malenko wins the belt back a week later on SmackDown. And then they proceed to have that awesome match at Backlash 2000, kind of forgotten classic between, of all people, Dean Malenko and Scotty 2 Hotty.
Yep.
Malenko proceeds to hold the belt for nearly a year before losing it to Crash Holly shortly before WrestleMania on Heat. And then Jerry Lynn, who it's easy to forget had a run in the WWF, wins the title from Holly, also on Heat. I think in his debut match.
How awesome is it that they had Jerry Lynn? If you were going to do something with this belt, you could do, Jerry Lynn coming in is so awesome.
I think Lynn and Van Dam had a match on Heat, but they only gave it 5 minutes. It's Heat. Why not just give them 20 minutes and let them have their match?
Why not put it on fucking pay-per-view?
Yeah. Then a month later, Jeff beats Lynn for the belt on SmackDown. This is after Jeff has recently been the Intercontinental Champion, so he's getting a singles push. And that brings us to this moment where we are right now. Jeff Hardy, the light heavyweight champion, defending against X-Pac.
And again, literally a month ago, Jeff Hardy was feuding with Triple H and Steve Austin.
Got one Triple of the biggest H to win the Intercontinental title on SmackDown.
One of the biggest pops of the decade.
Yeah.
And now he's here feuding with X-Pac for a belt that might as well not exist.
Yeah. Not much of interest happening here. These WWF cruiserweight, light heavyweight matches just suck. They don't wrestle a junior heavyweight style. They just wrestle the heavyweight style, except they're small. There's nothing interesting about it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Vince is so fixated on the WWE style being the WWE style that no one's allowed to wrestle outside of it. Yeah. And arguably, he never really unbends from that idea. Oh. He evolves what that style is, but everyone has to be on the same page.
Yeah. So you can't do what they did in WCW, where you just put the cruiserweights out there and let them do crazy stuff to each other. That's not allowed. That would show up the guys in the heavyweight division.
But arguably, this is the one thing that TNA did better than WWE, is the idea that no, it won't, because people still want to see the heavyweights because they're the stars, and because they're they have the visual appeal. And then you just put car crashes on to keep people interested until it's time for fucking Kurt Angle to come out.
Pac hits the X Factor and gets the pin, but it turns out Jeff got his foot on the ropes. I don't know what the point of this was.
Just to get Jeff Hardy on the show, I guess. I don't know.
Jeff hits a jawbreaker. He goes up top. Pac crotches him, but Jeff fights him off, hits the Swanton Bomb, and gets the pin.
Cool.
Worst match of the night?
It is. It's still not bad. X-Pac has never had a bad match. No. It's just not good. It's such a waste of Jeff. Why isn't he in the Why isn't the finals of the King of the Ring Jeff versus Edge?
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, explain that to me.
Yeah. Well,
Those are your two,
because they want to get Edge over as a face.
but those are the two stars of the next generation, right?
Yeah. Backstage, Austin storms into Regal's office so that he can call Vince and tell him about the rumors about Benoit and Jericho. He tells Vince, like, Vince is allegedly at home, and Austin calls Vince at home in Greenwich and tells him he needs to come to the arena.
What did you think of this aspect of the Steve Austin character? Like, the desperate for affection and reassurance from Papa Vince?
Well, they were doing whatever they could to get him booed, so give him every unlikable personality trait you possibly can.
Yeah.
They were trying.
Like, this is the one part that I didn't hate heel Steve Austin. In fact, I actually loved most of it. But, like, this particular part of the character kind of grated a little bit, because, like, he went so far with it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't what I wanted to see. I just wanted face Steve Austin. I thought there was plenty of mileage left in that character.
Yeah, and I mean, there probably was. But even if you're going to do heel Steve Austin, like, because it almost winds up turning Vince kind of babyface.
Yeah, but Vince has to put up with his shit.
Yeah.
Paige gets in the ring and calls out Undertaker. Sarah comes up on the screen, reveals that she's the one who shot the stalker footage of Paige, and says he's about to become famous. And then Undertaker comes out and proceeds to unleash the ass whooping of the century on DDP. This just goes on and on and on.
You don't often get a chance to say that you have witnessed a genuine burial in front of your eyes. But he whoops DDP's ass so severely that there's literally no coming back from it.
How do you not do a WCW run-in here? Like, have some WCW guys run in and attack Taker, and that allows Paige to get away.
Like, that should be the whole thing, right?
This
like,
program's over right here. Who cares after this?
Sure, eventually you're going to get to the point where DDP gets destroyed by Taker. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you don't do it here. This is the start.
No. Was this the beginning of the internet hating The Undertaker?
I think so. And I'm not sure it was really Taker's fault. Somebody backstage, and maybe it was Vince himself, was just like, well, we can't let these guys just come in and get one over on The Undertaker. He insulted his wife. He's got to kick his ass.
People act like The Undertaker, like, he didn't write himself. Like, maybe he could have talked Vince into doing this differently. But to be honest, like, Taker's just a guy who does what they ask him to do, which I think other people view as a better quality than I actually do.
Yeah. It's just, you can see how they make that decision, and Vince makes the same decision over and over again. It's just
what
like,
kills the invasion.
He brings these guys in, and like maybe he doesn't even realize he's doing it. But when it comes down to the moment where he has to make them credible, he always makes the decision, well, fuck these guys. You can't just bring them in and put them over. Yeah. Well, then they're worthless. DDP is worthless after this. They should have just released him the next night.
He's the second biggest star they've brought in from. I mean, arguably he's a bigger star than Booker T because he was actually like in the main event when WCW was still popular.
Right.
Like, Booker only got his big singles push after nobody was watching. So arguably this is the biggest WCW star they've got, and they bury him here.
It's I use the word reprehensible a lot in regards to stuff like that, but that's what it is. It's preposterously terrible booking. It's death. Why would you do that?
Back in the parking lot, Austin paces around nervously while waiting for Vince to get to the arena. Austin asks a security guard how long it takes to get from Greenwich to here. The guard says about an hour and a half, and Austin says Vince is going to be here soon. Come get me when he gets here. I know it feels like that segment went on for an hour and a half, but it's only really been like 10 or 15 minutes since he called Vince. Like, Vince can't get there from Connecticut to New Jersey in that time span.
Man.
Enjoyable performance from the security guard here, though.
Yes. Oh my God. I die every time.
Then we've got, I think, the match this show is most remembered for. It's the street fight between Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon. This started out on Raw when Angle did a gold medal ceremony to celebrate the fact that he had won his medals back from Benoit at Judgment Day. Shane kind of inexplicably interrupted that promo and proceeded to cut, honestly, like a pretty terrible promo to announce that WCW would be back sooner than anyone expected. This really just didn't make a lot of sense.
No, it had no reason to be here except for the fans popping for it, and he like literally gets up on top of Angle's little podium and he's just like, yeah, WCW, and obviously Angle Olympic slams him off the podium.
Yeah. So then, yeah, I mean, since then, Shane has interfered in Kurt's matches. They've done some stuff. You know, whatever. By this point, Shane already has his reputation for doing crazy stuff. Like, he did the big fall off the set at SummerSlam the previous year. And then a couple months before this, he had the Last Man Standing match against the Big Show where he did the elbow drop off the Titantron. So, like, we, by this point, know, like, okay, it's a Shane McMahon match. Like, cell phones on silent, the show is about to begin.
And this is the match he'll be forever remembered for.
Yeah.
This is the one that basically made him a babyface for the rest of his life. And then it's such a legendary... You can almost, like, performance almost isn't even the word. Like, the only thing you can equate this match to is, like, Hell in a Cell with Mick Foley and The Undertaker, right?
It's crazy what he goes through here.
Both of them. But yeah, okay,
Yeah.
let's walk through the match and see how far we get before you're already wincing at home.
Yeah, so to start with, Kurt has a concussion and torn knee cartilage, and he's wrestling his third match of the night.
I mean, just remarkable, right?
Kurt starts just riding Shane and beating the shit out of him. Shane gets Kurt with a potato shot and cut him open with it.
Yes, with some of his good punches, which look shitty but actually hit people.
That's the thing about Shane McMahon's punches is they look horrible, but he's actually just punching people for real because he can't throw a worked punch.
Well, it's that old Terry Funk advice, right? Of just hit him in the face for real. Except it's got to look good, and you can't just throw potato shots for nothing.
Yeah. Kurt proceeds to, like, cross-face the shit out of him and cuts his mouth open.
Yeah, you can tell that Kurt was given a receipt right there.
Yeah, like, look, again, he's got a concussion and a bum knee, and he's in his third match of the night. He's not in the mood to get punched in the face for real. Kurt taunts Shane by getting down on the mat to let him ride him. Shane takes the bait, and Kurt proceeds to just work him over on the mat. Kurt hits a couple huge belly-to-belly suplexes, but Shane is able to turn the tide with some clever offense. Shane throws weapons into the ring. Shane manages to get Kurt in the ankle lock, but Kurt powers out. Shane then gets Kurt in the sharpshooter. Kurt powers out again. Shane goes for a shooting star press, but gets hit in the face with a trash can.
Yeah, he does. I remember the first, because like we'd seen Shane take a lot of damage before. We'd never really seen him do that much physically impressive stuff before. We'd certainly never seen him perform this many actual wrestling moves in a match. Like, he actually trained hard for this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, is this the first time he breaks out, like, the shooting star press and the moonsault?
I can't remember if he did either of those at WrestleMania, but that would have been...
I don't think against Vince.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before this, I think he's just done the elbow.
So I always remember seeing the shooting star for the first time being like, what the fuck? Can he actually wrestle?
Yeah. Um, Kurt slams Shane over the top. They fight up to the top of the stage, and this is where shit gets crazy. I mean,
Okay.
it's already been like, wow, Shane's done some cool stuff. Now things are going to go very, very bad in a hurry.
Yeah. Now, first of all, what happens is Shane, while they're going up, suplexes Kurt on the ramp. This breaks Kurt's tailbone
Yeah.
in half.
Jesus. Yeah. So, Kurt has got a concussion, torn knee cartilage. He's bleeding out of his eye from getting popped in the face by Shane. And he just broke his tailbone on the concrete, taking a suplex.
Yeah. Now, to take you back to before the show starts, they had practiced what's about to happen before. They made a big window out of sugar glass, okay? And they practiced having Shane go through it. No problem.
Goes right through. It's fake glass. It's not going to cut you. Not going to, I mean, you're going to land on concrete. That's rough, but just goes right through the glass. No problems. Perfect stunt.
Here's the problem that nobody thought about, is that after that, they paint over the glass with the big King of the Ring.
Yeah, they paint the logo, and I think they even paint it like the whole thing just to make it transparent.
Yes.
They don't think about the fact that the dried paint is going to make the glass hard.
Because the sugar glass is like thousands of little pieces, basically. Well, this binds them all together.
Yeah.
That's not smart.
No. That's going to make this disastrous.
And when Kurt was doing bellies to bellies earlier in the day, he didn't have a broken tailbone making it impossible for him to plant on his back feet and throw anybody.
No, he was fresh. He wasn't in his third match of the night, and he didn't have a concussion.
So now we come to the moment.
Okay. So Kurt grabs him, goes to suplex him, suplexes him into the window, and instead of going through the window, Shane just bounces right off the window and goes straight down, landing his head on the concrete.
The sound the crowd makes when this happens.
Oh.
It's just like, oh.
That was not supposed to happen. Everybody in the building can tell.
They've put so much time and effort into this spot, though. And it's not just one spot. It's multiple spots. The whole match is kind of depending on this thing, because all Shane matches have to have this moment, right? So they try it again.
So what do? Yeah, Kurt picks him back up, suplexes him through. He actually manages to get him through the glass on the second one. He fucking throws him this time. This is a real Kurt Angle Olympian suplex. He sends Shane flying through this glass, and it cuts up both of them. Again, because the paint has made it actually hard and bound together.
Now, let the record show that as hard as this is to watch a little bit, this is a very cool spot.
Yeah.
I see why they wanted to do it so bad, because it makes such a satisfying sound, and it looks so fucking cool. It's an awesome spot.
Yeah, you can do this where if the glass actually breaks and there's padding for Shane to land on the inside, great spot.
Yeah. So Shane is now half concussed, because he's already landed on his head on stone once. And Kurt literally gave you can see the look on his face when he did that last one, that he gave everything into that. Well, but here's the problem. Yeah. Now they've got to do it again.
Now
they're inside this little set, and there's less room for Kurt to work with. They don't have, because the one that got him through, they kind of grabbed him with a running start and threw him. Now they can't do that. Now Kurt's just got to torque it. And he can't.
It would have been fine if that had been it.
I agree.
It didn't need to. They should have just aborted the subsequent ones here. But yeah, so they're inside in this cramped little space under the set. And he's supposed to suplex him through another pane of glass, back outside. I guess the question is, do you think they were supposed to break all 3 panes of glass here?
I kind of assumed so, yeah.
There's 3 of them. It kind of seems like you'd break them all. But I think, after this second one goes so wrong, they, abort doing the third one. So Kurt goes to suplex Shane, and like he kind of barely gets him over here. Like Shane bounces off the glass, comes straight down, and he headbutts Kurt coming down now.
Yeah. And then, God bless him, they try one more time.
Fuck. Gets him back up, throws him again, and Shane, Kurt's just out at this point. He doesn't have the strength anymore to throw him the way he needs to.
And then, according to legend, Shane says, "Come on, you pussy, you can't even throw me through a window."
Yeah.
So Kurt just grabs his head and stuffs it through the window.
Yeah. I have heard the story that this was like one of the most emotional people have ever seen Vince as he was watching this, that he was really struggling with what his son was going through here. It's a human reaction from Vince McMahon.
It's one thing to see your son do a stunt that you've practiced and it's safe. It's another
still
thing
going to be nervous, but like you trust. This is bad.
It's like, another thing to see something go off the rails and you're seeing your son be tortured on television.
Yeah, and he's just too fucking stubborn to quit.
And like, if this were a Vince match, you know Vince wouldn't have let him stop either.
No, of course.
So like
not.
You can totally see.
There's
nothing
where,
Vince
you
can
know
do.
where he got this from. Like he is his father's son.
So then to improv, they get a running start and Kurt just throws him, like grabs him by the back of the head and chucks him through the window.
Lawn dart.
But what it does do, and you can see why they wanted to do the one coming back out, because the camera angle they get on Shane comes bursting through the window is so fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's iconic. I mean, you could almost do I think a better version of this might have been if instead of going through the first window, they had just fought under the stage, and then Kurt had just thrown him out through the window.
Yeah, he just comes bursting through the window. Yes, that would have been sick. Yeah, it's just now Shane McMahon is obviously concussed.
No question.
Laying in a sea of glass. And Kurt Angle emerges from this room looking like a warrior at the end of the Battle of All Battles.
He looks like the fucking Terminator. Like half his face might as well be blown off at this point.
Yeah, he's covered in blood. He's limping. And he's got a look on his face like, I'm going to get to the end of this match or I'm going to kill everyone in attendance.
Also obviously concussed.
Yes. He's got that glassy-eyed thing. But here's the thing about Kurt Angle, is Kurt Angle's not human somehow.
No.
Like, he shouldn't be able to be moving.
Yeah.
But there's 15 more minutes in this match.
This really should have just been it. He should have just pinned him right there. But they got to get back to the ring. So Kurt puts him on a crate with wheels and rolls him back to the ring.
I don't know if that was the plan or not, but if it was improvised,
that's ingenious.
Yeah, big credit for Kurt.
He rolls Shane into the ring and covers him. Shane inexplicably kicks out at 2.
Well, they have to because they have something even bigger planned for the finish.
Yeah, like there's a couple minutes of like nondescript wrestling here because like Shane doesn't know where the fuck he is at this point.
The entire time Kurt's wheeling him back to the ring, the crowd is like silent because they think Shane is dead. Like this is a murder that they've witnessed. And when Shane kicks out, they come back to life. But like,
when was Shane more messed up? Here or that Survivor Series we did where Roman speared him out of the air and he hit his head?
Oh, see, that one was bad because that's old Shane, and you can tell he didn't know where he was.
No, he accidentally kicked out of the pin. And then the referee just had to be like, no, he's done. Get him out of here. So Kurt sets up a wooden platform on the top rope, goes up there with Shane, and Angle slams him off the top rope. And that's finally enough to end this cursed match.
Imagine in that moment that you're Kurt Angle.
Right.
You have 50 injuries. You can barely see straight. The person
Particularly
you're
your knee is jacked up, and you have to push off your knees to get him up.
Yeah. You're basically carrying dead weight in Shane McMahon up onto this thing. You're using a board to balance yourself because you know you can't do it without a board on the ropes. And then just that moment of freedom as you soar backwards and just like, I can finally pass out now.
It's like, all right, we're done. He pins him. I don't like this match. I just don't enjoy watching this.
The visual of a bloody, crumpled Shane on the ground with glass in his hair.
This is way too far.
Like, here's the thing. This is a special match, and I think I would regard it differently if they had been feuding for a while and this ended it. That's different, right? This is just kind of a throwaway match on pay-per-view that we just remember because of the preposterous lengths they go to.
Yeah. Like, just not a good idea.
Yeah,
like,
but like
this
in terms
last
of
stunt was horribly ill-conceived and executed.
But if they had, again, it's different to me if this is like the bloody blow-off to a huge rivalry,
Sure.
right? If they feuded for a year and even Hell in a Cell couldn't end it, and finally Kurt just had to kill him to end it, okay. But this is just a match.
Yeah, there's a feud, but it's just been a couple weeks of silly stuff.
The feud is an excuse to get to a Shane McMahon stunt show.
Yeah.
Because that's just what we were doing at the time. And the resolve Shane shows here, again, turns him babyface for the rest of his life.
Except then 2 weeks after this, they have to turn him heel because of the invasion's all messed up.
But that's the problem, is that they've turned him so solidly babyface here that nobody wants to boo him after this.
Yeah.
Like, you can't make him the leader of a heel stable after this, after he's put on one of the gutsiest performances ever.
But yeah, probably fair to say this is what solidified Shane as a mega babyface for life.
Like, we let Shane McMahon get away with the Kane testicle shocking stuff because of stuff like this. And I don't like watching this. Like, I'm not 16 anymore. It doesn't thrill me to see people just brutally hurt themselves like this. But it is a special match in wrestling history.
We see Jericho head into the ring, and then Benoit warming up, and then Austin is still in the parking lot waiting for Vince. An agent shows up and tells him his match is up and he has to go wrestle.
This match should have been awesome.
Yeah, I didn't really like this match either.
It's I don't think that it ever really got the chance to be awesome because everyone's walking into this thing beat the fuck up.
Yeah, and it gets worse during the course of it.
And also, we got to reference the fact that Chris Jericho and Steve Austin have some of the worst chemistry of any two people in wrestling history.
Awful matches every time wrestled.
It's proof that chemistry is a thing that does affect wrestling matches. Because some people argue that that's not a thing. It is, and you can tell because these two are good, but when they are in the ring together, they produce garbage. Unless there are at least two other people in the ring.
What is it? What do you think it is? Is it just like Austin can't take any of Jericho's stuff?
That's partially what it is. Like, they wrestle at like very different paces.
Yeah.
Jericho can't work a brawling style, has never been able to work a brawling style.
Not only somehow in the very twilight of his career as Le Champion has he become a credible brawler, I feel like.
And even then, it's a different kind of brawling from what Austin was doing. Like, Austin's working like old school Texas territory shit, and Jericho's entire career has been basically a repudiation of that style. Like, he is the opposite of that style. So, like, it's just, it's not good.
Benoit's out first. Man, did he look rough coming down to the ring here.
I've never seen somebody limp on their way to their main event match like this.
Like they've just run him into the ground. You can see how tired he looks. Probably hasn't been able to sleep. Like,
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
With what his body's been going through, and then he has to go sleep in a fucking hotel bed.
He's exhausted and in pain, but also this is his shot.
Yeah.
Right? So like the pressure he's under to deliver.
Yeah, like nobody believes in him. Like Vince is not buying that these guys should be in the main event, but he's got no alternatives. Like they've got to deliver a great match, and unfortunately they can't do it.
Like literally like these 2 weeks, like he finally starts to show something to Vince, and Vince finally starts to believe in him. And here, if he could just pull it out, he might get another one-on-one shot on pay-per-view with Austin, and that could make his whole career. That check could allow him to retire.
Yeah.
If he can just get there. And he doesn't.
Instead, he gets his neck broken during this match.
Fuck.
Which, based on the stuff he had done, you had to know it was hanging on a thread by this point. The headbutt off the ladder, the headbutt off the cage, the 10 German suplexes. He's just put so much strain on his neck.
And it's not just that, too. It's part of Benoit's style has always been like hyperkinetic. Like he like takes like crazy bumps, but he like bounces back up. Like that's his style. Like he's hyper energetic. Well, he's exhausted here. He's not taking bumps the same way that he normally does. He's not protecting himself as well as he normally would be able to because he just can't. Like he's too exhausted. That's what happened. When he lifts Jericho up for that back suplex on the top rope, you can just tell he's not doing it right.
Can't get him up.
It's just not the normal way. And so he's trying so hard to protect Jericho that he just lands on the top of his neck and it's over. That's it.
So Jericho is out second. I think this was the debut of the tunnel entrance video.
I think so, which is the best Jericho entrance for my money.
Very cool. Very Matrix-y.
Yeah.
Austin is out last. He is looking over his shoulder to see if Vince is coming out with him.
And he's not. You're all yourself. Haha.
Austin tries to run. Benoit and Jericho chase him into the crowd and beat him up. They make it back to the ring. Benoit and Jericho continue to double team Austin. Then Austin and Jericho team up against Benoit and throw him out of the ring. Jericho gets the walls of Jericho on Austin, but Benoit breaks it up. Benoit suplexes Jericho over the top rope to the floor. Jericho got a concussion at some point in this match. This is where I imagine it happened.
Because of course he did.
Yeah. And he wrestles the next night because it was just a little concussion.
You know, compared to everyone else, what does that even mean?
There is a certain degree of who was supposed to wrestle the next night because Austin definitely can't, and Benoit has to have neck surgery. They're getting real thin at some point here. Kurt sure as shit isn't wrestling tomorrow night after what he went through. Austin tries for a stunner, but Benoit blocks it. Benoit hits the stunner on Austin. The referee is slow to count, and Austin kicks out. Benoit hits Austin with the title belt, but Jericho breaks up the pin. They do a one-on-one segment with Austin and Jericho. Benoit goes to climb back into the ring, and Jericho hits him with that springboard missile drop kick to send him back down to the floor. Jericho hits a bulldog and the lion salt, but Austin gets his knees up. Benoit comes into the ring and levels Jericho with a chair. JR says that this is not a no disqualification match, but all triple threat matches are no disqualification.
Yep.
Austin stuns Benoit. Everybody's down. Austin manages to get an arm over Jericho, but Jericho gets his shoulder up at 2. Austin hits a superplex on Jericho. Benoit comes in with the rolling Germans. He hits 5, but then Austin gets a mule kick to break it up. I'm glad he didn't try to go for all 10 there.
Very much agree.
Jericho gets Austin in the walls of Jericho. Benoit comes in with the crippler crossface at the same time, and Austin taps out. The referee tells them to break and says that the match will continue. I don't know about that. I don't really think that makes logical sense.
It's very strange.
Is it? I mean, as bizarre as it would be, the match would be a draw and Austin would retain the title.
Yeah. I don't understand what that was about.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Austin bails out to the floor and grabs a chair. Well, first, Benoit puts Jericho in the crossface, but Jericho manages to break out. Austin comes back into the ring with a chair, but Benoit hits him with a baseball slide. And then Benoit and Jericho do a double knockout spot. That's the setup for Booker T to jump the railing and make his WWF debut.
What a cool moment this was. And, Booker T is so hyped up. Like, he is on fire.
He hits his axe kick on Austin when Austin is, basically standing straight up. Booker gets his leg up so high.
Yep. Then, unfortunately, Booker's a little too pumped up, and he hurts Austin.
Yeah, he gets Austin, and he has to do, a back suplex thing through the announce table, but he doesn't clear off the announce table, so he has to just kind of throw him, and he has to get him over the monitors, but land him on the table, which is real tough to do. He kind of overshoots it. Austin hits his hand on one of the chairs. I think breaks his hand and also hurts his back in the process.
Injuring the top guy on your first night in the company.
Yeah,
not great.
I think that might get you some heat when you're coming in from the competition.
That coupled with the fact that he and Buff Bagwell have the worst match in wrestling history in the WCW tryout match. It's amazing he had a career.
Yeah. Back in the ring, Jericho hits a bulldog on Benoit and then a really ugly lion salt. Benoit was out of position. He was too far away from the ropes. So I don't think he thought Jericho was going to go for it. So he started to sit up and Jericho landed on his head.
Not good.
Probably didn't help his neck.
Nope.
Jericho drags Austin back into the ring and hits a moonsault off the top rope. Only time I can remember him doing that.
The only other time I remember him doing it is when that second rope broke and he couldn't do the lion salt, so he had to do it off the top. But that used to be his finish back in his Japan days.
Oh, yeah. Benoit breaks up the pin, then he hits the diving headbutt on Austin. Jericho pulls the referee out to break the pin up there. Benoit hits a super back suplex on Jericho. That's where he injured his neck. You can tell the second he lands that he's in bad shape.
Yeah, before he's done bouncing off the canvas, he's already got his arms wrapped around his neck. It's not selling. He's done. This is it.
No, he's probably worried he's paralyzed.
Yeah, he said it was like a gun going off in his back. It's...
Oh, shit. Jericho's down. Austin's down. Benoit can't get up. Austin finally gets an arm over Benoit, and the ref counts 3. I'm sure that wasn't supposed to be the finish, but I'm glad they just ended it here.
Yeah, there's nothing else you can do, honestly.
Yeah, watching it live, I was just mad, because I was like, what the hell? How does Benoit get pinned after he hit the suplex? I, of course, didn't realize that he had actually legitimately injured his neck here.
Yeah. And I'm sure in that moment, I'm not sure if Benoit was the one who was supposed to get pinned, but it's in that moment, you got to make the decision if we're going to do anything with anyone, it's obviously going to be Jericho, so let's pin Benoit.
Yeah, I don't know what the finish is supposed to be here. I don't know if Vince was actually going to show up and save the day.
It would have made more sense that way. It kind of seemed like they were doing that. But, they have to get Benoit out of here now.
Yeah.
Because there's a chance that, depending on how bad a neck injury is, you can die. So you got to do something now.
Now, paralysis is very much on the table here. Got to get him to the hospital right away.
And nobody knows that better than Austin.
Yeah. Yeah. Thankfully, at least Benoit, it's not the situation they were in where Austin was supposed to win that match against Owen Hart. And if he lost it, he was going to have to kiss Owen's ass. So he absolutely could not lose the match, and they had to try to find a way for him to win it, even though he could barely move.
I will always wonder how he managed to roll up Owen and stand up and get that pin with a broken fucking neck. Like,
it's insane that he pulled that off.
It's inhuman. Like, it doesn't make sense.
He literally couldn't move.
It's like the story of how like Taz broke his neck and just wandered into the hospital like, hey, my neck hurts.
Yeah. And then the people were like, I think the doctors were like, how did you get here? Did someone drive? It's like, oh no, I just walked. They thought he had been in a car accident and his neck was so messed up.
Yep.
But
Wrestlers are different, man.
No, these guys are not normal, but I don't want to glorify it too much because this is not smart.
No, this is horrible.
That's just what we've seen on this show. It's just like, this is a company that's out of control. Like, this is a company that needs to check itself and like think about whether what it's putting these guys through is worth it.
At a time when they've made so much money and it's time to look to the future, they seem constitutionally incapable of doing that.
No,
like they are burning through their present.
All they care about is that Monday's ratings. Like, they are just trying to get back to those big numbers. They want those 6s back instead of the 4s that they're doing.
And there's no one in this company that can tell Vince that they need to change. Nobody. Because this is just what the company is. Like, that's what.
When do they finally realize? It's like not till like 2004. I feel like they really start to dial things back.
The brand switch is when Vince like puts out the memo to everybody like, hey, we're slowing down the in-ring styles. We're not doing crazy bullshit anymore.
We're gonna tell stories.
Yeah. We're going to try to put over simpler moves. We're not going to do crazy shit. So, like, clearly he comes to a realization at some point.
It takes a while. Yeah.
It's not for, like, another year after this.
It's 2002 at the earliest, but maybe even later than that. I mean, 2002, they do a lot. They do more just a lot of hot shot booking with, like, a lot of guys jumping between the shows and stuff like that. But I do feel like they tone back some of the crazy. At least they do raunchy, like, angles, but I think they do dial back the violence off the top of my head. I don't remember, like, a lot of crazy, insane bumps from that time.
There's a good chance that this show right here is part of what convinced Vince to, like, scale back a little bit. Because it's not like they really do, but, like, I don't think that they really keep doing, like, 20 matches for guys on the same show after this.
They can't. I think they realize they can't sustain this pace. And they're just very much in danger of just running out of guys who are over on their roster. Like, it's getting real thin after this.
Like, Vince unknowingly put a gun to his entire roster's head. And just, this is the show where the trigger gets pulled. Off. And then he's like, oh, shit, what happened?
I mean, his son damn near died right in front of his eyes.
His arguably the best talent he's ever had in Kurt Angle.
Yeah, could have had his career ended here.
Yeah. The two up-and-comers, he's lucky that Jericho didn't get hurt worse than he did. He is concussed. Benoit's toast. Triple H is in the hospital. He's not back for 9 months.
Yeah.
The only act he's got left is Austin, and Austin's
all fucked up too. Austin could barely get backstage.
It just happens to be Austin, so Austin's just gonna keep going regardless.
Shit.
And Austin as an act isn't where it needs to be yet.
No. This is just a disastrous show. Like, they come out of this a wounded company.
Yeah, as exciting as this show was coming into it, and as exciting as the show was to watch at the time, they've killed themselves coming out. Yeah. The DDP Undertaker storyline is toast. Yeah. Every storyline in the whole company is trash except for the invasion. That's all they have left.
That's going to go bad real quick. If you want to hear about that, listen to our invasion episode, because we go real in depth about what happens after this.
Not good, boys and girls. It's not good.
No. Yeah, I just... On the one hand, sometimes I wonder, do we enable these guys by cheering this stuff? But I don't want to see this kind of stuff. I don't want to see these guys hurt themselves. I don't want to see guys jump off ladders. I don't want to see guys do suplexes on concrete through glass. Like, they don't need to do that.
There's just a point in my life where, like, I obviously when I was 16, when all of this stuff was going on, it was the shit. Like, it was the best. Like, I don't know where the turning point happened for me, but, like, I don't like seeing people get hurt anymore.
Benoit, like, for me, like, I know, but surely by then I started to look at the things with a different perspective.
But even, like, the ladder match at WrestleMania this year, which was good, but, like, that spot where, like, Jimmy or Jey Uso, I can never remember which one, takes the bump outside the ring. I'm like, no, don't. Why? Don't do that. Like, you don't need to hurt yourself.
That was edited and he landed on a crash pad.
I know, but even so, like, I don't like to see spots like the one where Braun Strowman throws Kevin Owens off the cage to the announce table. Like, I hated it viscerally in the moment.
God, Kevin Owens has done so much crazy stuff. He did that giant fall off the sign at WrestleMania.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and surprisingly, he's hurt now.
The one where he went through Seth Rollins, and it was like literally he had to hit like a target the size of a pin to not hurt everyone.
And they're doing this in front of an empty stadium. Like, there's no crowd there to react to it.
I don't think wrestling needs this.
No, but whether it's, I mean, and I don't even know if I don't even think it's the company making them do it. I think they want to do it.
I think, well, yeah. Like, these people, the people who did this stuff were the heroes of people from our generation. Like, Jeff Hardy's entire career was built on the back of the fact that he would do things way more dangerous than anyone else would do them. And thanks to drugs, seemingly came out unscathed. And then we were all like, Jeff Hardy, why are you on drugs?
The line from the Orton promo about Edge has just stuck with me, where he says Edge is a junkie. He's addicted to the roar of the fans. I think they are.
Yeah. I mean, once you've been in a TLC match and you've had that moment, just imagine that moment where Edge spears Jeff Hardy off that ladder. Just, you'd spend the rest of your life trying to recapture the rush from that moment, right?
Yeah. But it's got to be bigger next time because they already saw that.
And that's the thing. And that's what eventually Vince realized to some extent, is you can't keep topping yourself. No. It's impossible.
No. And you got to accept that it's just not going to be as hot for a little while until you reprogram people.
So you have to change what makes people react like that, because you can't get that reaction twice. It doesn't exist like that.
No, and that's where you get into the good argument that, like, the Attitude Era killed wrestling.
Yeah, because you did everything. Yeah. Like, there's nowhere to go.
How could you ever follow it up?
Yeah.
Oof. This is a little depressing rabbit hole we've gone down.
But I did love this show. It's one of my favorites of all time.
I really didn't enjoy watching this. And it's not that, like, the matches weren't good. It's just, like, I got so caught up in the bigger, like, we kind of reversed ourselves here. Usually I feel like I'm the one who just, like, watches the show in a vacuum and you kind of evaluate, like, the bigger picture. But, like, here I could not get away from, like, the bigger consequences of what was going on here.
Yeah, if it weren't for nostalgia, I would be right in the same boat with you. But watching this show takes me back to being 16 years old, sitting in my basement in the dark, watching SmackDown. Like, no phone calls. I gotta watch SmackDown. It's the most important thing in my life. Ah!
Yeah, these couple months leading up to Invasion, like, basically starting with the Raw where Benoit and Jericho win the tag belts, all the way to Invasion, are, like, truly maybe the most exciting TV WWE has ever booked.
Absolutely. Maybe the most exciting TV in the history of professional wrestling. And unfortunately...
yeah. We think we're getting the greatest storyline of all time, the thing we've been wanting for years.
Yeah.
Turns out the dreams turned into a nightmare.
You got to go listen to that Invasion pay-per-view, because literally from the last word we say on this podcast, it picks right up from there. And ooh, are we not happy about it?
Yeah.
You can find that on the SoundCloud and our YouTube page.
And that's a wrap for King of the Ring 2001. I think we've said everything there is to say about this show. Next time, for something completely different, we are going to cover the 1990 Great American Bash, which is a big moment for WCW as Sting wins his first WCW title by defeating Ric Flair in the main event. It's going to be very interesting to talk about Sting winning the title and the bumps he hit along the way. And I can't for the life of me remember anything else on that show, so that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, from a show that I've watched well over 100 times to a show I've never fucking seen ever.
No, but, it's going to be almost the 4th of July, and that means it's Great American Bash time.
It's time for the bash, baby.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time.